The movie begins in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a man drives a van into a parking garage near PNC Park. After paying for parking, he assembles a sniper rifle and appears to randomly shoot 5 people around the stadium and along the North Shore Trail before escaping in the van. The police, led by Detective Emerson, arrive at the scene and find a shell casing and the coin used to pay for parking. A fingerprint on the coin identifies James Barr, a former U.S. Army sniper. A raid on Barr's home uncovers the van, bullet-making equipment, the rifle, and Barr himself, who is promptly arrested. During an interrogation by Emerson and District Attorney Alex Rodin, Barr is offered a choice: life in prison if he confesses, or a guaranteed death sentence, as Rodin has never lost a case. However, Barr shocks them by writing "Get Jack Reacher" on a notepad. Based on the information they have, Emerson explains to Rodin that Jack Reacher is a former U.S. Army Military Police Corps major and a brilliant investigator with numerous awards and medals. After a lifetime in the military, he abruptly left and became a drifter. With no fixed address, phone, credit card, or email, Reacher is almost impossible to trace. For only the second time, he re-enters the U.S. and then vanishes completely. After watching a news report about James Barr and the shooting, Jack Reacher arrives at the district attorney's office, where Rodin and Emerson are discussing his whereabouts. Rodin denies Reacher's request to review the evidence but agrees to let him visit Barr, who was brutally beaten by fellow inmates during transport and is now in a coma. At the hospital, Reacher meets Barr's defense attorney, Helen Rodin, the DA's daughter, who is trying to save Barr from the death penalty. Reacher makes it clear that he is not Barr's friend and has no idea why Barr requested him. Helen offers to arrange access to the evidence if Reacher agrees to become her lead investigator. Reacher declines, explaining that he has no interest in helping Barr. He reveals that Barr is a killer who joined the army to gain the authority to kill. During his time in Iraq, after years of waiting for permission to act, no orders came and he was eventually sent home. Frustrated, Barr went on a killing spree, targeting men who were later found to have committed serious crimes, including the sexual assault of 28 Iraqi women over 4 days. Although Barr avoided prosecution due to the victims' criminal records and the Army's efforts to suppress the events, Reacher vowed to stop him if he ever killed again. While Reacher is convinced of Barr's guilt, he is baffled as to why Barr, knowing Reacher would seek to punish him, requested Reacher's involvement instead of confessing. Reacher agrees to investigate on the condition that Helen visits the families of the victims to gather information about those murdered. However, her efforts take a troubling turn when one grieving family member threatens her. Her father chastises her for taking on a case she has no chance of winning and for putting herself in danger. Meanwhile, Reacher visits the crime scene, unaware that a man is watching him from a car with a file on Reacher. At the scene, Reacher notices inconsistencies and concludes that a trained shooter would have chosen the cover of the nearby Fort Duquesne Bridge rather than the parking garage. He later meets Emerson to examine the weapon evidence. Emerson is impressed by Reacher's sharp memory, noting that he recalls the weapon's serial number without taking notes. Reacher questions why Barr would bother paying for parking before murdering random strangers. Later, Reacher visits a bar and orders food. A young woman named Sandy sits next to him and tries to seduce him but gets offended when Reacher refers to her as a prostitute. Her boyfriend and his friends soon arrive, looking for trouble. Reacher calmly tries to dissuade them from fighting but ends up skillfully defeating them all in a brawl. Strangely, the police arrive with surprising speed and arrest him. Helen later arrives at the station and bails Reacher out. Realizing the bar fight wasn't random, Reacher deduces that someone is trying to intimidate him into dropping the case. That night, it's revealed that the man watching Reacher is Linsky. He meets with Charlie, the real shooter from the opening scene, and their boss, the Zek, the mastermind behind the plot. Linsky admits he hired the thugs to intimidate Reacher at the bar and confesses to killing Jeb, one of the thugs, because Jeb knew him. The Zek, displeased with Linsky's mistakes, orders him to chew off his thumbs as punishment. When Linsky fails to comply, Charlie shoots him dead. The next day, Reacher tracks down Sandy at her workplace, an auto parts store. She explains that she was coerced into approaching him at the bar by Jeb. Feeling sorry for her, Reacher advises Sandy to leave town for a few days. Using her car, he goes to Jeb's house to continue his investigation. Inside, Reacher is ambushed by Jeb's friends, but overpowers them in a fight. After interrogating one of the thugs, he learns that Jeb has been missing for several days, confirming his suspicion that Jeb is already dead. Reacher discusses his findings with Helen and starts to suspect that Barr may have been framed. He points out that the only evidence linking Barr to the crime scene is the coin with his fingerprint. Reacher theorizes that Barr asked for his help not because they were friends, but because Barr trusted Reacher to uncover the truth, even if Reacher believed him guilty. Reacher concludes that the Russian mob might have used Barr's fingerprint and DNA to plant evidence, framing him for the murders. Reacher notices a car tailing him ever since he started the investigation. After running a background check, he discovers that the car is registered to a front company owned by the Russian mob. The mob had been trying to buy a construction company to strengthen their legitimate operations, but the owner refused to sell and even filed a lawsuit against them. Reacher theorizes that the mob orchestrated the owner's murder, disguising it as part of a random shooting by killing 4 other people nearby to cover up the real motive. Meanwhile, Charlie and his men locate Sandy and kill her. Reacher is subsequently framed for her murder. Following a lead, Reacher travels to a shooting range in Ohio, owned by former U.S. Marine gunnery Sergeant Cash. Cash agrees to talk only after Reacher demonstrates his sniping skills, which he successfully does. Cash reveals that James Barr was his best shooter, capable of hitting bullseyes from 700 yards. However, Reacher disputes this claim, stating that Barr was never this skilled while in the Army. He theorizes that Barr was accompanied by someone who swapped the target sheets to make him appear more competent. Surveillance footage confirms this, showing Barr frequently with a man who Reacher recognizes as part of the Russian mob team that had been targeting him. The true culprits are members of a Russian mob posing as legitimate businessmen, led by their elderly leader, known only as the Zek, prisoner, a former Soviet Gulag inmate. With the help of their accomplice, corrupt police detective Emerson, the mob kidnaps Helen and holds her hostage at a construction site or mine. Reacher, with sniper cover fire from Cash, outsmarts and eliminates the guards one by one. Reacher confronts Charlie, holding him at gunpoint, and challenges him to a hand-to-hand fight. Using his superior skills, Reacher easily overpowers him. He later reveals to Emerson that the giveaway of his involvement was the parking meter, the kind of detail no one, not even Reacher, would have checked unless they were part of the setup. Reacher rescues Helen with precise shooting and kills Emerson in the process. Finally, Reacher confronts the Zek about the conspiracy while Helen calls the police. The Zek smugly points out that all the other conspirators, now dead at Reacher's hands, were the only witnesses against him. He taunts Reacher, suggesting that as a drifter accused of murdering a young woman, Reacher is more likely to end up in prison than himself. Without hesitation, Reacher shoots the Zek between the eyes, ending the ordeal. Reacher is confident that Helen will work to clear his name. Reacher and Cash escape the scene, leaving Reacher a wanted man. When James Barr wakes from his coma, he admits to Helen that he has no memory of recent events, but assumes he must be guilty of the shooting. As he mentally reconstructs how he would have carried out the crime, it aligns perfectly with Reacher's original theory, which Helen later explains to her father. Unaware of these developments, Barr remains willing to confess and accept punishment, driven by the fear that if the legal system fails, Reacher will deliver his own brand of justice. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.